Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Let's continuing from the topic of the previous chapter. Let's first consider the case where the big drawer is locked. The child's brain has the expected G wave of there's a lollipop in the big drawer. And through the activation of the environmental memory G in the brain or in the or the input of the sensory G wave, the characteristic internal structure of the big drawer's position information is generated. If there is no excessive interference from other G, the child will move towards the big drawer. If the big drawer is locked, this situation will be input through the child's sensory G wave, activating the corresponding experience G and combining with the expected G wave in terms of characteristic internal structure. What is the content of the activated experience G? It could be a locked drawer can't be opened, or a locked drawer can be opened with a key, or a locked drawer can be forced open by brute force. These situations are the expressions of the G waves of several sub-G of the corresponding experience G after activation in the G wave display area. Depending on the strength of the sub-G and the dispersion degree of the sensory G wave input, the expression of the G waves can vary in strength and sequence, but the emergence of each G wave can combine with the existing expected G wave, thus generating different emotions or behaviors. If it is a locked drawer can't be opened, then the expected G wave will combine with it. The new G wave generated can't activate the lollipop G and the corresponding player sub G, but will activate the discomfort sub G, making the child feel disappointed. If it is a locked drawer can be opened with a key, then after combining with the expected G wave, a new expected G wave will be generated, just like the addition of the characteristic internal structure of the big drawer in the previous chapter. Here, the addition of the characteristic internal structure of the key occurs. Next, the child can generate the characteristic internal structure of the key through the activation of the environmental memory G, or directly input the characteristic internal structure of the key through the sensory G wave, thus initiating the behavior of getting the key. Once the characteristic internal structure of the key is input through the sensory G wave, the new expected G wave will take effect, leading to the behavior of using the key to open the drawer. If it can't be opened, this is similar to the first case of the key can't open the locked drawer. The expected G wave will undergo a new combination and activate its discomfort sub G, thus generating an emotional response. In the above two cases of locked and the key can't open, if the child's experience G contains the sub G of the locked can be forced open by brute force, then the input of the environmental G wave may activate this sub G, thus combining with the expected G wave to form an even newer expected G wave, continuously guiding the subsequent behavior. If the child goes to great lengths and finally manages to open the big drawer and gets the expected lollipop, then from the generation of the initial expected G wave to eating the lollipop, the entire behavior of getting the lollipop is completed. However, if after opening it, he finds that there's no lollipop in the big drawer, the expected G wave is not fulfilled. The immediate disappointment and the disappointment during the process work together in the same direction vector effect, making him cry. And if no new characteristic internal structure related to the lollipop's position information is combined through the input of the environmental G wave or the activation of the memory G in the future, then the child's entire behavior of getting the lollipop is likely to end. Similarly, in several cases where the drawer is not opened, such as the drawer being locked, the key not working, being unable to break it open or bite it open, any of these situations can lead to the end of the child's behavior of getting the lollipop. The end of the getting behavior essentially means that it is no longer possible to combine an expected G wave strong enough to facilitate the getting behavior. In the G activates, in the activities, this can be divided into four situations. First, the expected G wave is no longer generated in large amounts. That is, the G that initially generates the expected G wave is only weakly activate, activated or not activated at all, meaning the corresponding G energy is at a low level or has been exhausted. Second, the sensory G wave or memory G wave can no longer provide the corresponding characteristic internal structure, so that the expected G wave cannot combine the corresponding behavior. At this time, the expectation merely becomes a thought. Third, other behavioral G waves are too powerful and long lasting, preventing the getting behavior G wave from winning the competition. competition. Fourth, the expectation is fulfilled through the getting behavior. For example, when the child gets the lollipop, although the sensory G waves inputs the characteristic internal structure of the lollipop, strongly activating the corresponding G that forms the expected G wave, the characteristic internal structure of the lollipop's position information is also input, which will participate in combining a new behavioral G wave, such as the eager behavior of unwrapping or sucking the lollipop.
Lollipop.
Through the analysis of the above two paragraphs, we can see that the child's behavior of getting the lollipop can be a simple act of getting it, or it can be a continuous process of making choices when facing the big drawer. In the process of making choices, the child may exhibit behaviors such as looking for the key, biting the lock, beating the lock, with teeth, biting, or biting the lock with teeth, etc. That behaviors can all be regarded as sensory behaviors of the entire behavior of getting the lollipop. From this perspective, behaviors can be classified into different levels according to artificial standards, which seems to be in line with what we previously referred to as one behavior with multiple components. How exactly do they match? And what are the differences? You need to think more about this. In addition, here is another thought provoking question referring to the four situations where the getting behavior ends. In the previous in the previous talk, think about how to use the G theory to terminate some seemingly abnormal behaviors of psychiatric patients by making analogy. Okay, that's all the content today. See you next time. Bye bye.